Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya. But before the Aztecs and before the Maya, there were a culture who are referred to as the Olmecs.
The Olmecs, Mesoamerica's oldest civilization, carved colossal stone works that defy explanation. But that was never all they left behind. Scattered across their monuments and carved into stone are hidden messages. After decades of failed attempts, quantum AI has detected a secret pattern in an ancient slab.
Figured out how to store 201 gigabytes of data on a square inch of tape. That means a magnetic tape reel the size of the palm of your hand can hold as much data as you would have in 330 laptops.
The first translation it produced isn't just surprising. It hints at knowledge so unsettling, it could overturn everything we thought we knew about ancient civilization. Decoding the Olmecs. The Olmec civilization has always been difficult to fully comprehend. When their monuments were first uncovered in the early 20th century in southern Mexico, archaeologists believed they were looking at mere ceremonial art. Massive basalt heads, stone altars, and carved slabs etched into the ground. Yet, as they dug deeper, that explanation became harder to defend. By the middle of the 20th century, archaeologists working at Olmec sites miles apart began noticing something unsettling. Symbols carved at San Lorenzo showed up again at La Venta. Designs from Tres Zapotes matched fragments found elsewhere. They found the same crossed bands, the same flame-shaped eyebrows, and the same cleft heads split down the center. Researchers began photographing, tracing, and cataloging every symbol they could find. They laid them out side by side, compared sizes, placements, and wear patterns. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Researchers discovered that these symbols followed certain rules. They appeared in specific locations on monuments and were repeated in similar combinations. Archaeologists soon faced an uncomfortable possibility. The Olmecs may have been recording information, beliefs, authority, identity, and maybe even events. But to understand what these carvings meant, scientists began studying who the Olmecs were. The Olmecs lived roughly between 1200 and 400 years before the Common Era. They inhabited the tropical lowlands of what are now Veracruz and Tabasco. This was swampy land, flood-prone, hot and dense with the jungle. It was definitely not an easy place to build cities, yet they did. The first was San Lorenzo. This wasn't a simple village. It was engineered to a level far beyond ancient civilizations. Stone was transported over long distances. Elite compounds sat above common areas. And towering over everything were the colossal heads, some weighing as much as a modern truck. But then San Lorenzo declined and power shifted to La Venta. Here, the Olmecs built ceremonial centers, aligned with precision. Pyramidal mounds rose from the ground. Stone altars were positioned as if meant for ritual display. And beneath the plazas, mosaics were buried, hidden from general view. This was a culture that cared deeply about symbols and meaning. They farmed maize, beans, and squash. They fished. They traded jade and obsidian across long distances. Their rulers were not just political leaders, but spiritual figures, intermediaries between worlds. They engaged in bloodletting rituals, ball games, and shamanic practices that shaped their daily life. And through it all, the same symbols followed them. Historians call the Olmecs the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Yet the Olmecs themselves left no clear written record that explains how they were governed, how they were able to carve stunning monuments with ancient tools, or why their civilization suddenly crumbled. Their centers were abandoned. Monuments were broken, heads were defaced or buried. This wasn't slow decay. In fact, some researchers believe it looked deliberate, carefully orchestrated. While environmental change or internal conflict may have played a role, none of these explanations fully account for the timing or the destruction. But if the Olmecs were using symbols as a structured system of communication, then those carvings may be the only record of what went wrong in their cities. And when archaeologists discovered an ancient stone block carrying disturbing symbols, that possibility became impossible to ignore. The Cascajal block discovery. In the late 1900s, construction crews working near the small village of Lomas de Tacamichipan uncovered a flat stone slab buried among debris. This location was widely recognized as the Olmec heartland by archaeologists. The slab was made of serpentine, a greenish stone favored by the Olmecs for ritual objects. It was roughly the size of a tablet, weighing about 12 kilograms, with a smooth surface covered in symbols. The slab wasn't found on its own. It lay among broken ceramic pieces and small clay figurines, everyday objects left behind by the people who once lived there. When these items were tested, they gave archaeologists a clear time frame. The slab was placed in the San Lorenzo phase, between 1200 and 900 years before the Common Era. And with that confirmation, everything changed. If the slab belonged to that period, it was older than Zapotec writing, older than Maya inscriptions, older than any confirmed writing system in the Americas. For years after it was unearthed, the block remained largely unnoticed, studied quietly by specialists behind the scenes. Then, on September 15, 2006, the discovery was formally announced in the journal Science. The paper carried a blunt, unmistakable title, Oldest Writing in the New World. And with that single announcement, archaeology was shaken to its core. The Cascajal block, as it became known, carried 62 distinct signs carved into its surface. They had been arranged in horizontal rows, something no other known Mesoamerican script had ever done. Later writing systems favored vertical columns or even stacked glyphs. This was different. The symbols themselves were strange and restrained. They resembled abstract shapes, plant-like forms, and insect-like figures. Simple outlines stripped of excess detail. Some appeared again and again, while others surfaced only once. A few even returned in the same positions across different rows, a detail that couldn't be ignored. Ceremonial art doesn't follow rules like that, only communication does. The spacing between the symbols also looked deliberate. They weren't crowded together or scattered at random. Instead, they moved across the stone with a steady rhythm, pointing to a structure researchers hadn't seen before. That structure is what set the Cascajal block apart from every later Mesoamerican writing tradition. It left archaeologists with an unsettling possibility. Olmec writing may not have influenced later civilizations as earlier believed. It may have existed on its own, then disappeared. Yet not everyone accepted this claim. Some scholars insisted the symbols were just iconography. Ritual signs, clan markers, and sacred images meant to be seen, not read. Others raised a valid concern. The block hadn't been uncovered during a controlled excavation. It had been found during roadwork, before anyone could document exactly how it was positioned or what layers of soil surrounded it. In archaeology, that missing context matters. Without it, it becomes harder to be certain how an object was used or what it was meant to represent. This meant that any conclusions had to be drawn carefully, without rushing past what couldn't be confirmed. But the block itself refused to be dismissed. In 2019, researchers returned to the block, this time armed with modern digital tools. High-resolution scans captured every detail, the depth of the carvings, the subtle marks left by tools, and the wear across the surface. As they studied the data, they discovered that every symbol had been engraved with the same technique. There were no signs of modern tampering and no mixing of styles. The block was internally consistent, deliberate, and undeniable. Computational analysis also revealed patterns invisible to the naked eye. Certain glyphs were carved in distinct yet repeated patterns across the stone. This was undeniable proof that researchers were looking at a system of communication, quietly waiting centuries to be decoded. Stephen Houston, one of the scholars behind the original publication, argued that the block revealed a writing system no one expected the Olmecs to possess. It wasn't a fully developed script like the later Maya writing, but it was real. A system carefully designed to record information. If that interpretation is correct, the implications are profound. The Olmecs would have developed writing centuries earlier than anyone imagined. Literacy in Mesoamerica would not have begun with the Maya or the Zapotecs, but with the Olmecs themselves. Still, the Cascajal block stands alone. No second tablet has been found. But if the Olmecs were capable of writing, even in this early experimental form, what were these symbols actually meant to convey? Decoding the Olmec carvings. Perhaps the most common symbol found in Olmec carvings is the jaguar. It appears again and again across stone monuments, jade figurines, masks, and reliefs. This symbol was carved into altars and etched onto stelae at sites spread across the Olmec world. Wherever Olmec imagery appears, the jaguar is usually there with it. In some carvings, the jaguar is shown as an animal. In others, it is blended with human features. A wide mouth turned downward, heavy-lidded eyes, and a deep cleft cut into the head. These figures follow the same visual rules, even when carved by different hands or found miles apart. What makes this symbol deeply unsettling is what it represents. In the Olmec world, the jaguar was the strongest predator in the jungle. It was capable of moving through darkness, water, and dense forests with ease. It hunted silently and controlled territory humans could not. The jaguar was the ultimate symbol of authority, fertility, and transformation. It represented the ability to cross boundaries between human and animal, living and spirit, ruler and god. This idea of transformation suggests that the Olmecs were not just depicting animals. They were depicting experiences, altered states tied to ritual, trance, or shamanic practice. Another image that appears just as consistently in Olmec carving is the cave. On many stone altars and monuments, the central feature is a deep, hollowed opening carved directly into the stone. These openings are shaped like mouths or entrances. Figures are often shown seated inside them or emerging outward, as if moving through the stone itself rather than standing in front of it. The space never looks decorative or secondary. It is where the figure belongs, and everything else in the carving is built around it. In Olmec belief, caves were understood as places of origin and transition. They marked the boundary between the human world and deeper layers of existence tied to the underworld and creation. By carving these cave-like openings into monuments, the Olmecs turned stone into a passage rather than a surface. Placing rulers inside these cave forms was deliberate. It visually linked leadership to cosmic authority. A ruler was not just a political figure, but a mediator, someone who could move between realms, speak to gods, and ensure balance. This idea repeats itself across several Olmec monuments. Many stone carvings show seated figures positioned on what archaeologists call thrones or altars. These seats are usually framed, elevated, and enclosed. The ruler is often centered still, almost fused to the stone itself. Researchers believe that stillness suggests legitimacy rather than force, power that does not need to explain itself. Aside from these major symbols carved into Olmec monuments, there are several smaller symbols that appear just as consistently. These carvings are easy to overlook at first, but they repeat across several sites and objects in a way that feels too deliberate to ignore. They include flame-shaped eyebrows, crossed bands, cleft heads, and other abstract marks. They were often placed near rulers or within the same carved spaces. Some researchers believe these smaller symbols represent supernatural forces tied to survival and belief. Others think they were meant to convey ideas such as authority, renewal, or transition, rather than beings. There is also a small group of researchers who believe that time was part of what the Olmecs tried to record. Later, Mesoamerican cultures tracked seasons, solar movement, and agricultural cycles with extreme precision because their survival depended heavily on it. While the Olmecs left no readable calendar, their carvings may hide early astronomical knowledge. This means that instead of recording mere dates, the Olmecs may have carved these symbols to indicate the time and seasons for certain important actions to be taken. Some scientists also believe that the symbols functioned as ritual guides, a visual sequence that told priests what to do, what to offer, and what to invoke. Chants, movements, offerings, transformation rites were passed down visually rather than verbally. Some other symbols may have had political meanings tied to them. The carvings may hold the key to the Olmec's lineage and power. Who ruled? Who inherited? Who was connected to whom? Instead of names spelled out, authority was expressed symbolically, through posture, placement, and repeated signs understood by those inside the system. There is also a cosmological significance tied to certain symbols. Many altar symbols appear to show three distinct layers: upper elements, central figures, and lower openings. This is believed to represent the sky, earth, and underworld. A vertical map of the universe carved into stone. The ruler sits at the center, holding the worlds together. This means that the Olmecs may have been trying to depict how the universe works and where humans fit inside it. Centuries after the Olmecs vanished, Maya and Zapotec scripts emerged. Fully developed, readable, and structured. They used glyphs, they tracked time, they even recorded rulers and rituals. Yet the question that refuses to go away is whether those later scripts borrowed more than art and religion from the Olmecs. Did they inherit fragments of a much older symbolic system? And were the Olmec carvings the beginning of writing in Mesoamerica? Interpreting later Mesoamerican scripts. In recent years, researchers have begun using digital repetition analysis and basic machine learning tools to study ancient Mesoamerican scripts. These systems do not try to interpret meaning. Instead, they scan symbols for measurable patterns. How often a sign appears, where it appears, and which signs tend to appear together. When these tools were tested on known Mesoamerican writing systems, the results were unmistakable. The software detected clear grammatical behavior. Signs appeared in fixed positions, repeated in predictable orders, and followed rules that match how written language works. But when the same analysis was applied to Olmec carvings, the results were different. Patterns still appeared, but they stopped short of full language. Symbols clustered and repeated, but without the strict ordering seen in the later scripts. It was more structured than decoration, yet less organized than writing. This suggests that the Olmecs were working with a symbolic system that carried meaning but had not fully become language. With those patterns identified, researchers began meticulously comparing Olmec carvings to the first fully developed Mesoamerican writing systems. The earliest of these belonged to the Zapotecs. This system emerged around 500 years before the Common Era in the Oaxaca Valley. By that point, writing was no longer experimental. Zapotec inscriptions carved into stone monuments, tombs, and ceramics follow clear rules. Individual signs stand for words or sounds, and sequences record names, events, and authority in a direct way. When Zapotec writing is placed alongside Olmec carvings, the difference becomes obvious. Some symbols, such as stylized faces, abstract shapes, and animal forms, look familiar, but the way they function is not the same. Zapotec symbols are locked into a grammatical system. Their placement carries specific meaning. Olmec symbols, by contrast, repeat without forming readable sentences. There's also the Maya writing. This was developed later, around 300 years before the Common Era to 200 years into the Common Era. This writing eventually became one of the most complex systems in the ancient world. Maya glyphs combine logograms and syllabic signs. They were used to record kings, battles, rituals, astronomy, and time itself. But most importantly, this system can be read today. Some visual traits from the Maya scripts even resemble older Olmec forms. But the writing system is its own creation. Most scholars agree the Maya did not inherit a direct script from the Olmecs. Instead, they inherited a worldview, a belief that symbols could hold authority, that writing could connect rulers to the cosmos, and that recording time mattered. This means that the Olmec carvings may have taught later cultures why to write, not how. Yet the most interesting comparison comes from the same region the Olmecs once occupied. After the major Olmec centers declined, a new culture emerged in Veracruz, known as the Epi-Olmec. This culture appears between roughly 300 years before the Common Era and 250 years into the Common Era. Unlike the Olmecs, the Epi-Olmec clearly wrote. Their script, often called the Isthmian script, appears on monuments like the La Mojara stela. It contains hundreds of glyphs arranged in long sequences. Dates are recorded using the long count calendar, the same system later used by the Maya. Their rulers are named, and their events are tracked. The Epi-Olmec did not replace the Olmecs suddenly or completely. They inherited the same landscape, many of the same symbols, and similar ritual traditions. When researchers study the Isthmian glyphs, some of them resemble earlier Olmec motifs, but in a more organized and standardized form. This is where the Cascajal block fits most naturally. Instead of representing a complete writing system on its own, it may show an early stage of development, a moment when symbols were being repeated and arranged deliberately, but before full grammar and sound values had taken shape. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the videos on your screen. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.